Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm very happy to see so many here today from different clubs and also from abroad. So let me specially welcome Valarie and Mark from abroad. Valarie will appear on scene later on. You will hear more about her. We're also very pleased to see our governor here, Hannele, who will actually come back next week.
Exactly.
And tell more about what's happening locally. Today we stay on a higher level. Let me introduce Valarie on the scene, and you will have to tell me exactly what you're doing in the high up levels up in Rotary.
So I'll just address the elephant in the room, why I'm on crutches, because many of you have asked me. I'm usually a lot more mobile, but I had a hip replacement surgery about 13 weeks ago. My hip is great. My leg muscles are screaming at me. So I'm trying to take it a little bit easy. So thank you. And I'll just level set that question on why I'm on crutches. Thank you so much for inviting us to this joint Rotary meeting this morning. And thank you for asking me to get up at 5 a.m. The jet lag hasn't quite kicked in, so it was not so hard to get up at 5 o'clock this morning. So thank you, Hannele, for picking us up and driving us very safely. And thank you to Jan and Anna for picking us up at the airport and giving us a little tour. It was wonderful, and we look forward to seeing you again maybe this evening. And hello to everyone online, and I look forward to perhaps seeing you this weekend on this wonderful district conference that we're going to share on the beautiful Viking Cinderella. That's right. I knew it was a. We did, yes. So I look forward again to addressing you over the weekend, but I thought this morning I would just bring you up to date on some of the things that are happening at Rotary International. You mentioned that it's up here, but it really is not. What happens in the club is what really drives our organization. And one of the things, so I was on the board of directors for 2 years, very honored. It was also the COVID years. So I spent the 2 years in front of my computer in the comfort of my own home, which was safe and very nice. I have the honor of sitting on a few committees since I've left the board. So my term ended at the end of 2022. And right now I am the chair of our Rotary International Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Council. So just to give you a little bit of background as to what we're doing in this area, the world is changing every day. And of course, with social media, we are more aware of what's happening around the world every single day. There's so much conflict and natural disasters happening. In 2020, of course, there was a lot of social unrest, a lot of social injustice happening around the world, particularly perhaps in the US. And being on the Rotary International board, our members always want to hear what Rotary feels about what's going on around the world, maybe in the form of an official statement. Now, although we're not a political organization or not religious organization, we can't deny that we stand for peace and the work that we do in that area. So it is really incumbent upon us to support our members and support our leaders in the districts when these things are happening around the world with official statements to support our members and our values and core values in Rotary. So at that time, of course, particularly in the US, we had the George Floyd killing. We had a lot of protests going on. And so our members were looking for Rotary to take a stand. And also what was happening in our organization, if you recall, is the year that Barry Rassin was our Rotary International president. Visually, if you recall what the board of directors looked like at that time, there were no women on the board. And of course, the board of directors is not elected by the president. It's elected by us in our zones. Our directors are elected locally in our zones by a council of past district governors. So of course, this was not a reflection on the leadership of Rotary International. It was the fact that we don't have enough women in leadership positions in our districts and in our zones that perhaps we're stepping up or being recognized as leaders in Rotary. So the combination of the visual of not having women on the board and what was happening in the world really prompted the board at that time to come out with a statement of equality of women, and really it morphed into more of a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement because of what was happening in the world. So I was on the board at the time, and our president then, Holger Knack from Germany, decided it was time for us to start a task force, so not an official committee of Rotary, but a task force to really support our trustees and our board on what diversity, equity, and inclusion could mean in our organization and how we could support our members. So again, I was on the board, perhaps at the right place at the right time, and Holger asked me to chair that. To give a little background, perhaps, of myself professionally and my husband, Mark, we're from Toronto, Canada, and we spent 25 years as restaurant owners in Toronto in one of the largest, most recognized franchise operations. And the reason I mention this is because in our operation, and we ran our restaurants for 25 years, we hired people with disabilities of all types that was represented of our communities. So at any time, our staff, which we had over 250 on our team, we had about 16% at any time that represented a person with a disability. And we became known as an inclusive employer. So people felt that they would want to come and work for us because of the culture that we developed within our organization of inclusiveness. We were also in an area of Toronto that was home to many recent immigrants mainly from Southeast Asia. So they were new to our community, they were new to the language, they were new to the currency. And so working in a restaurant, in a very fast-paced restaurant, really allowed them to learn the language, feel like they were part of the community. So it wasn't just the people with disabilities that we hired, but also recent immigrants that helped to build this inclusive culture. So I tell you that because we had some experience on what an inclusive culture looks like. And I quite often compare it to our Rotary clubs, because our Rotary clubs should be representative of our community. And the more people that we have in our Rotary clubs that bring different perspectives, the stronger that we are. So using this experience and being on the Rotary International board really, I think, helped me develop the roadmap of where diversity, equity, and inclusion could go with our members. So right away, we were very limited to the number of people that we had on this task force. And we really wanted to make sure that it was had global representation so that we had the different perspectives, because we know that inclusion and equity and even diversity can look different around the world, but can even look different in our own communities. Across town, we might have different demographics, or we might have a population that has, living in one part of our community that it's important to include. So we were limited to 9 members, and we made sure that we had representation from a Peace Scholar, and we had representation from Rotaract, as well as the underserved demographics within Rotary. So wanted to really make sure it wasn't a North American view of what diversity, equity, and inclusion might look like in the United States or Canada. And so for 3 years, we've developed a lot of resources that are on Rotary.org. If you haven't been to, we have a landing page on diversity, equity, and inclusion that have a number of resources that you can use at the club level or the district level. Of course, if you go to our learning center, which I know you all are familiar with, you'll find a lot of courses there that you can learn either personally or as a club, what unconscious bias means, how to build an inclusive club. There's many, many resources there as well. So let's fast forward 3 years, the DEI task force. I went as the chair to the joint boards in January of 2023, and I asked for our DEI initiative to be more permanent and not just be a project of Rotary. Because if you work in this space professionally, you realize that this involves a culture change that will take many years to embrace. It's not a project that we can say 3 years from now, just like our work in peace, that we can check that box, that we have accomplished, everything that there is to accomplish in this space, because that is not realistic. So again, I went to the boards and I asked to make this more permanent. We also asked Rotary International to hire someone permanently in this position at Rotary International to be that conduit between our clubs and the work that the advisory council is doing or the boards are doing. And so the task force is now an advisory council. And so every July 1, any of us in Rotary are allowed to and able to apply to sit on a Rotary International committee. And now the advisory council is included in those applications. So as of July 1, we'll be able to rotate our members off this by applications of our Rotary members around the world, because we don't know what the skill set is unless we ask somebody to apply for our committees. So we're looking forward to having a strong committee. This year, we're working on a number of initiatives, again, to help our clubs in this space. We recognize that as we are on this journey, we will have to open ourselves and be vulnerable to very difficult conversations that sometimes arise when we listen to the experiences of current members in our clubs or existing members or potential members that we want to have join. And so we're going to be putting together some talking points to help our leaders address some of these conversations that do come up, which we recognize are not always easy, but it's part of that journey on inclusion. Also, we're going to be developing a standardized diversity, equity, inclusion PowerPoint presentation that can be customized to where you live in the world, just as that starting point to help support our leaders. You'll also find in any of the Rotary International major events that we have, whether it's the convention. If you were in Melbourne, you probably heard Jennifer Jones on stage, or if you weren't in Melbourne, you had the chance to view it online. And Jennifer, who of course is a fellow Canadian, a good friend, and I'm very proud that she was our first woman president. And I know she visited you as well, did President Gordon McInally recently. Jennifer made some very strong statements on the stage. Again, if you haven't seen her speech, I encourage you to look at it. And basically she said, if Rotary doesn't, who will? Who will step up? Who will step up and support our members where they are with the challenges that they're facing around the world, specifically some of the laws that prevent some of our members from being their true authentic selves where they are in the countries that they live in. Specifically, she addressed the Uganda situation and the LGBTQ plus laws that have been put into place, making it very difficult for some of our members. In fact, many of our members have had to leave Uganda because of their safety. I've met a few of them in Toronto. Mark and I walked in the Pride Parade in June, and many of them we were walking with as Rotary, and many of them approached us and told us that they had to flee their country to come to Canada and other countries where they will not be persecuted and feel safe. So as Jennifer said, if we don't, who will? We need to support our members around the world. So that at a very high level is what we're working on around diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is not, I always say this is not a membership drive. We're facing some of the same membership issues in Canada and North America that you are here in Sweden. And I know that you're going through a major district amalgamation, which is not an easy process. And I give a lot of credit to the leaders. It's probably not what you signed up for in your district governor year. If you're going to be district governor, that you're going to face some of these challenges, but I know that you're working very collaboratively. So, that's just the beginning of correcting some membership problems, and we're facing them too, as I said. DEI is really about, and inclusion and equity is really about taking care of our current members, and so that we don't lose our current members. They're not leaving because of club culture, or they don't feel welcomed. And when we get that right within our clubs and we invite others to come in, I believe that more members will stay, because we've developed that inclusive culture that I explained or described in our business model. where our turnover in our business typically is over 100% a year, and we enjoyed a 34% turnover in a year. And that meant that we had a better business because our staff stayed longer. And again, if I relate that to our Rotary clubs, I believe we'll be stronger when our members stay because they feel welcome in our Rotary clubs, and they'll encourage their friends to come and join us as well. So again, that's a high level view of what we're doing. I'm happy to answer questions. I sit on another couple of other committees at Rotary International. I was at Rotary International just last week. Actually, the trustees and the board had their meetings in person in Evanston, and I flew in. I'm lucky that I'm in Toronto, and it's a 1.5 hour flight. And I flew in to do an update on behalf of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Council. And then we actually broke the board into regional groups to discuss opportunities that they may have in their regional areas in this conversation of DEI. So the board and the trustees are very much engaged in this, and they want to support their members. Many of our districts around the world have DEI district committees. And so if you have not established a district committee around DEI, I'm happy to speak to you further about what that may look like and some of the values and benefits of striking such a committee. And I'm happy to support you on that. So happy to answer any questions if you have any. Yes.
One of the problems we are facing in Rotary is our age profile, first of all, and the social mix of people, because even if we are trying to mix in different classes, we don't. And one reason is because of the fee. If we are to be more inclusive and include even immigrants, many of them that needs us for networking and support in their roles, they don't have the economy to pay for the membership fee. So I think we should have some kind of, I've talked about it in this club, that we should have some kind of introduction period for people that want to join but cannot because of economical reasons.
Yeah. And you know, socioeconomic is part of diversity, equity, inclusion, and it's really, we have to recognize that we have privilege. We have privilege that we belong to a membership organization that has dues, and from a socioeconomic point of view, that's not inclusive of everyone in our community. But the beauty in Rotary today is the flexibility we have in how we meet, the models that we use. And so, you know, I'm not sure if Rotary Community Corps is very popular here in Sweden. It's not really in Canada, but Rotary Community Corps is a group of people in your community that you work with when you do community projects, whether it's the Baltic cleanup or it's working in the food bank or it's something that is very important to the group that you're working with. And so they're not members of Rotary, but they're a group of people that you count on to work with you side by side in different projects. And so you can look that up on Rotary.org. It is established around the world, but it's a way to engage some of these communities in service. But we also have the flexibility at our club and our district around our dues structure. You know, quite often I know we pay Rotary International dues. And so there's discussion even at the advisory council that everywhere around the world, we pay in US dollars. Is that really equitable to somebody who makes $100 a month in certain parts of the world? And so it's one of those things that needs to really go to the Council on Legislation, which is one of the legislative body that we all as Rotarians can make applications for, to hear enactments and bring them in front of the worldwide body of Rotary. It's a complicated thing, but it's something that, not the council, but the dues structure. It's something that we need to start speaking about. If you recall if you look at the history of women in Rotary, how many times women in Rotary came to the council before it was finally approved. And actually it went to the Supreme Court of America before it was approved, but it was in front of the Council on Legislation a number of times. And so even though some of these enactments aren't always accepted the very first time, we need to begin the conversation. So we need Rotarians to speak up about certain things like dues structure that is, the same around the world. So the dues to Rotary International are the exact same dollars in US dollars around the world. And that's something we need to address. But we have flexibility within our districts and our clubs, whether we start a satellite club or we start a club that is a cause-based club that is specifically around maybe some of the issues that we can help in the community that speak to some of the demographics that currently aren't in Rotary. So it's really about having the conversation with those who aren't here right now to understand how we can engage them in the work that we do, and perhaps they'll join Rotary, down the road, a later date.
A long answer. It's a difficult question.
It is. All these questions are always difficult.
Eva?
Yeah, I wonder if you have any information how you think about Russia today. I mean, there are a lot of clubs there. Are there any contacts between Rotary and the Russian clubs? And what do you see? Could you give us a view? Because Russia is a very important part of our work with the Baltic Sea.
Mhm.
They are a big pollutioner. Eutrophication from their part is very big, and we can never solve the problem if we are not working together. And now it's a very hard question. And I think most of us are very pro Ukraine, and it's worrying. And I thought that you might have had these discussions at Rotary International.
I don't have a very current answer for you, but I do know that because Russia is not a districted area, we have assigned counselors, if you will, to work with the Russian clubs for many, many years. And so they are in contact with them on a regular basis, as regular as they can be. I'm not sure that they are meeting because they're not allowed to meet. I do believe that they are finding ways to communicate. But at this point, I don't have any current information on what is happening in Russia.
Just add a question, because all the organizations within Russia that have foreign contact are named foreign agents. And what is Rotary, and on top of it, an American-based society or what?
Yeah. Certainly, if communication and conversations are happening, they're not happening through official channels.
No.
And I believe even the emails are very guarded in what they say. I do know at the very beginning that some of our Russian clubs to these counselors said that they, would love to meet, would love to help, but they cannot. They will be obviously persecuted. And so again, it's not very up-to-date current information, but I'm going to guess it's not very different than it was in the first couple of months of the conflict, of the war. Yeah.
We hope that they will survive until there will be changes in Russia.
I can tell you that Rotary in Ukraine is growing. Rotary in Ukraine is growing. And, one of the reasons that Rotary is growing, that grew during the pandemic, is the number one reason we hear from our members through our member survey is service. And of course, there's a lot to help out in Ukraine right now. I'm, sure in the neighboring countries also we have, growing. I was the advisory to the Interact Council that we have at Rotary International during COVID when I was on the board, and a lot of our interactors and Rotaractors were working at the border during the early days to help some of the people that were in transit. So, very much in service.
One of our online friends, Monica, you have a question.
Yes, so Monica Lisakers here, and well, my question is related to this diversity and inclusion, your conclusions. Would you mind sharing a little bit of, the dialogues you've had and what you've seen, what it all, why we're struggling with this on an overall level, I'm thinking.
Well, thank you for the question. I wouldn't say that we are struggling with this overall. We've now conducted 2 global DEI surveys. We did one in 2021 and we did one in 2023. And overwhelmingly, we're hearing from our members that this is very important to them, that they feel that they now have a chance. We ask questions around how they felt their opportunities to leadership was, how they feel included in their clubs, if they feel that we welcome the community that they live in. And overwhelmingly, they're saying that Rotary is on the right path, that they're very happy with the fact that we are having these conversations. Anecdotally, I can tell you that I've spoken all over the world, mostly on Zoom, but I've had the opportunity as well to travel a lot since I was director. And the stories that I'm hearing from Rotarians, one story in particular I'll share with you was a club in North America where a member, it was a Black member in Michigan, who had been a member of the club for 15 years. And because of the conversation we're having today, they felt that they could speak up and be who they are and bring their culture to the club and bring their lived experience to the club. But for 15 years, they didn't feel like they had a voice. And I was really taken aback, as was everybody. It was Zoom, everybody on the Zoom screen. This member had been with them for 15 years, part of their family, and they didn't realize that he was not able to be himself. And so having these conversations allowed him to say, I've invited other members who look like me from my culture to the club, but I've also seen them leave because he wasn't accusing his club of not being inclusive, but basically saying, there's not many people like me in this club. And so I didn't feel like I could be myself. And so many stories and experiences I've had in speaking with clubs that are very, very similar, that until we started this conversation, people didn't feel like, and I'll share this a little bit more on the weekend, but I'm not sure everybody will be there, but who we are is so important to how we show up. So, we each have visible and invisible diversities and characteristics that define who we are. And it defines the choices we've made in life and where we live, the job we have, the partner we chose in life. And so until we get to know each other in our club, I'm not sure that we truly are ready to welcome those who don't maybe look like us and aren't part of the same culture as us. So there are a lot of challenges because in these conversations, we are bearing a very personal part of us. And it's very challenging sometimes to understand somebody's lived experience if we haven't experienced that ourselves. But again, I think this is where we learn from each other, where we actually grow as people. I'm really proud of the fact that we were restaurant owners for 25 years, but what I'm most proud of is what I learned from our team and our staff, whether they were culturally diverse or whether they were diverse in their disability experience. I am a stronger person, I'm a stronger leader, and I believe I'm more human because of what I learned from being in that kind of environment. And I believe that is what our members are all learning today or have the opportunity to learn from these conversations that we're having.
Thank you so very much. And also for, sharing some personal reflections on that. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay, time is out now, and I would like to thank Valarie very much for this opening of something that we have not discussed so much in our clubs, I think. So maybe we should do it, Anneli, more in our district.
You should wait to my visit next Friday because you can. I can tell you it's not what it was last
Looks like.
year. No.
Okay, we're looking forward to that next Friday. But we thank all our speakers by giving 30 doses of polio vaccine in your name.
Excellent.
And the guy there.
Yes. Is a friend of yours?
Well, not yet. But we give another 60. So 90 doses of vaccine has been given.
Wonderful.
Because of you.
Thank you so very much.
So thank you very much,
Thanks.
Valarie. Give her a big hand. The meeting is over, and thank you very much.